Given the, and I think this is not being hyperbolic when I say it, given the brutal economy that we have out there, how does your area, your function help the students and alumni here at CCSU?
Yeah, it's good that you recognize that we help the alumni as well, because we have seen an increase in traffic, certainly with the current climate. But what we do is all of the usual career service types of assistance in terms of resume writing, preparing students for the job search, helping them with interview skills, and so on. One of the things that we've undertaken over the years, although our office started strictly as a cooperative education office, little by little we undertook all of the traditional career services functionality. And one of those things that we started to do was to list and post and be kind of a central repository for all manner of job postings. Certainly those first-time, full-time professional entry-level positions predominantly, although more and more employers come to us looking for those skilled alumni. As well as the cooperative education, internship, experiential types of situations that students might be looking for to bolster their overall background.
And are very attractive to companies.
Absolutely. And in fact, many companies, and the companies that I say who really get it, incorporate some type of an experiential situation in their HR recruiting strategy because it is so important and it's so competitive and tough to get the right hire in and train them and retain them.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you just for a second too. I know that my experience has been, Ken, that when a student has an internship or co-op experience, but my experience has been more on the internship level, if the student does a good job on an internship, the chances of that company making them a job offer after they graduate is pretty high. I mean, it's a direct correlation.
Absolutely. That's the part that they really get. The conversion rate isn't as great as it used to be. Right. And unfortunately, again, given the economy, we've seen a drop off in the number of these opportunities for our students. But those companies who are still involved with it are still looking for those gems and want to continue with that kind of relationship.
So, given the economy at the state level and the national level, because I imagine there are some students who graduate from CCSU who move on to another state. So, but specifically the state economy in general, the national economy, what are the areas that you know of where you see quote unquote growth? Whether it's the industry, the sector, the function, the company, what do you see out there, Ken?
Right now we're seeing a lot of increased interest for students coming out with skills that would be compatible with success in the manufacturing engineering area. So even though the United Technologies divisions are down a little bit and there's some other companies around the state, we're seeing more inquiries and more interest in hiring some of our graduates with our new engineering programs here in the School of Engineering Technology. It's a very attractive program because those students not only have some of that theoretical background, but they're hands-on kinds of
manufacturing engineering, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So healthcare is the other area that's certainly growing. Education used to be the other stalwart, kind of dropping off a little bit, unfortunately, and then we all see what's going on in the various cities and towns, and you know how you had to deal with that as being a mayor, where some communities have had to downsize and they've laid off some teachers, and certainly as the original Teachers College of Connecticut, where we still do produce many of the prepared teachers for the classrooms, it's difficult right now.
Are your students, Ken, aware, I'm sure you make them aware, but are they aware, generally speaking, that there's 77 million baby boomers that are moving into the retirement age, and the generation behind the baby boomers, there's only like 23 million of them. Right. So if you do the math, there's going to be a lot of opportunity out there. I mean, do they recognize what's happening in the workplace, all the retirements that's going on?
Again, the growth in the areas in healthcare from pediatrics to geriatrics. And that geriatric area, the care for the elderly and the growth in that area, because our life expectancy is better and better. There's been a lot of good opportunity there.
But even in education, Ken, I mean, there's a lot of teachers that are moving into retirement age. And in government, although I'm a little bit hesitant to say this, a lot of students don't realize, Ken, that over the next couple of years, even though there's been a little bit of a blip, the government's hiring over 200 to 300,000 people. Not that we want more people in government, Ken, but 200 to 300,000 jobs, and students need to realize that those aren't the government jobs that you and I knew
Exactly.
back then.
Exactly.
These are higher paying jobs with degrees with great benefits. Do you find many of them that are interested in the public sector at all?
Many are interested in it, certainly, and certainly with what's going on with the new administration and so on in the state. It's anybody's guess as to what's going to happen with the state types of positions. But federal positions, that's another matter. Some of that demands relocation. And the typical Central alum, again, is from the state, chooses to come to the state and wants to stay in the state. So that's one of the frustrations for me personally as a career advisor, that students sometimes aren't willing to go where those great opportunities present themselves.
Why is that? Why do you find that? Is that because of family ties?
Family, familiarity, it's the parochial nature of the New Englanders and the Nutmeggers. Not uncommon at all. In fact, so many of, actually, I came out of a town in Connecticut, and many of my friends who went off to school, became teachers or whatever, they're back in that hometown doing their thing. It's an interesting phenomenon.
It is an interesting phenomenon because there are a lot of other opportunities in a lot of different areas of the country if you're willing to move. And most people at a young, very, very young age, which they are, if there's ever a time when you're going to branch off, that would be the time.
Absolutely.
Don't have family yet,
Exactly.
et cetera, et cetera.
And we're giving a big push, too, to kind of expand those horizons. One of the big initiatives on campus is to increase the international presence and the opportunities for students to participate in global outreach activities, whether it's a week-long kind of a junket, more cultural related than academic, or it's a full semester abroad. From President Miller right on down through the ranks. That's a big initiative that we're trying to promote.
Ken, let's go back to healthcare again, just quickly, in terms of job prospects. I mean, you know what's going on in Washington to the extent that guys like you and me know what's actually going on there. But given the overall spectacle that's taking place, is your prognosis for the consequences of whatever permutation Obamacare turns out to be, is your prospect for jobs more than now in the healthcare? About equal, less than?
Yeah, I'd take a neutral position on that right now, especially with the new Republican Congress.
Yeah.
It's anybody's guess.
As to what's going to happen.
It really is. And you know, on the one hand, there was all kinds of ideas of prosperity in terms of the employment market, given Obamacare and so on. But now that we've got a change in the power structure, we've got to kind of hold our breath on that. And that's kind of been right across the board in all employment sectors. And certainly now, as some financial situations are becoming a little bit more clear, we go through the end of the year cycle and the phone's not ringing. We're not getting those inquiries from employers about referring resumes and so on. Now that the picture's getting a little bit clearer, now we're starting to see a little bit more activity.
Ken, do you find, I know that in working with other universities, a phenomenon takes place when the job market is slow. And the student looks out there and says, oh my goodness, there's not as many jobs as I thought there was going to be when I started here 4 years ago. And they will have a tendency to, not necessarily cause and effect, they'll have a tendency to go for an MBA, or they'll go into law school because they figure maybe if I go get my MBA now, when there aren't very many jobs, take me 2 years in law school, let me do that, get it out of the way, and I'll only be, pick a number, 22, 23, 24 when I finish. Do you find many of your students think about that?
That's a common strategy when you see the ebb and flow of the economy in the various cycles, and I've been in it long enough to see a few of these cycles where more students do consider graduate school right away. I mean, initially, certainly it's nice if you can get into a professional situation where that employer is going to pay for
good old
your
educational
advanced
tuition.
education. But if you're not in that kind of a situation, grad school is a good place to hang out for a couple of years and hope that things turn your way.
It's interesting, you know, that you mentioned that, Ken, because sometimes when I'm doing some work with some students, I'll say, so tell me, what would you rather take, a $50,000 job with no educational tuition or a $40,000 job with educational tuition? Wait a minute now, it's going to cost me 30 grand to get a master's degree. Maybe I ought to take 10 less at the salary level. I mean, there's a lot of things go into acceptance.